Personally, I think a 5% proposal at this time is an insult to the intelligence of the city employee and also to the bellies of their children. Certainly believe that the proposal should have been higher, at least 10%. Our original proposal for a wage increase for city employees was 20%, and we expected to get at least half of this in conjunction with the present rise of the cost of living of 6% continuing to go up, and actually 5% comes under the anticipated rise in the cost of living for this year.
We have been advised by attorneys that Mr. Benson has acted in violation of state laws and refusing to certify funds as being available and refusing to obey a court order of the Tarrant County Commissioners Court.
Mr. Thompson, where would these funds come from?
From the sale of Turnpike Stadium, which was an amount of $710,000. Funds are also available in road and bridge funds.
I received an inter-office memo dated August the 7th from Sheriff Decker this morning. It's directed to me, and it says, quote, "I have this day appointed Clarence Jones as my chief administrator, who will assume the duties of operating the sheriff's office during my convalescing." And it's signed Bill Decker, Sheriff.
Now, does this memo actually change the operation of the sheriff's department in any way?
Certainly not, Carl. All this does is to define the area of responsibility for the sheriff's office to one person.
Now, you wrote a memo to the various department heads today on this inter-office memo. What did you say to the office?
Well, realizing full well that Bill Decker is the sheriff and that he is temporarily out of the office, I merely called it to their attention that the operation of the Dallas County Sheriff's Department, my feelings were that to the end the citizens of Dallas County must continue to receive and will receive the service, the good service that they've grown to expect in all these many years.
Now that we are dealing with a commercial prime rate of 8%, obviously a rate of 7 or 7.5% is a very marked improvement, both on a percentage and an absolute basis. We have already seen some considerable improvement in the rates on government securities. They're selling at the present time a full percentage point below the historic highs which they've had within the past year. The mortgage rate is a longer-term rate with more structural frictions built in. It changes more slowly and is not apt to be as responsive in the short term. But I think, again, the tendency will be towards some slight, moderate abatement in interest rates generally, and it will gradually permeate the entire capital field. But I would not foresee low rates for a number of years for the reasons I've already given, which is that the principal reason being that we do have more needs for capital today in our economy than ever before, and the supply-demand factor during the next few years is likely to maintain a firm and fairly high structure of interest rates generally.
well, shucks, they just might ask anything. And
is there any particular funny thing that comes to mind that you've heard?
Well, the number one thing is how do these astronauts go to the restroom?
Since the time that we called for this news conference, we were informed that the parties involved had gotten together, and certainly we are happy that these parties involved seemingly had reached some agreement of mind.
Mrs. Dahl, what's the most unusual case that you've handled?
Oh, I think probably the most unusual case I handled was the case of an overseas wife who has 14 children. She has 5 children and 6 children. Her husband had some and she had some, and now both of them have children. And when her husband went overseas to Vietnam, she did just beautifully. She attended the Overseas Wives Club and did very well, and then there was illness in the family. And she came in and asked to have her husband come home just temporarily because of the illness. And the last time she attended the Overseas Wives Club, her husband was back in Vietnam. And I think that takes real courage for a woman with 14 children to allow a husband to return to Vietnam after he's once come back home again. And I think that probably is a case that made me feel more sympathy, more compassion with these military families probably than any other.
Her unselfish and tireless efforts, wise counsel, compassionate words, and resoluteness enabled those in need to overcome the aftermath of flood, endure family hardships, and resolve personal problems. Her 22 years of service have been in the best tradition of the American Red Cross and manifest great personal courage and devotion to her fellow men. Her selfless dedication to duty have earned honor, respect, and gratitude from members of Carswell Air Force Base, symbolized by the Strategic Air Command Certificate of Merit. So congratulations and thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure to work.
It is not up to me to decide whether the employees need a raise. That's not the question involved at all. All I am doing is trying to be a strict constructionist of the law which the auditor's office has to work under. And this law states that I cannot certify the raise within the monies that are in this year's budget.
It was not stated to me that
doll in recognition of your outstanding contribution and service to the mission of the Strategic Air Command, I'd like to present to you a certificate of merit for your 22 years of service for us here. This certificate is accompanied
Ministers Alliance. At this point, we called a news conference predicated upon what was happening in our community. You see. But since the time that the news conference was called, there has been some other arrangement taken that would, we feel, that could add to the community solidarity.
Now, you said, now run that through so I can get that down. What, since the time?
Since the time we stated for the news conference, there have been new developments and community cooperation among the CLCs.
They are in on the discussions to some extent.
CLC was the hit.
Well, you called the news conference to speak about the activities of the SCLC?
The news conference was called to speak on the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance position. But since the development has come up, the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance agreed with what has happened.
Would you be willing to just say, for our benefit, for the cameras, that you called the news conference for the purpose of giving your views in relation to the matter, and since that time, apparently an agreement has been reached between the parties who were.
Yes. I have to be.
And you're happy or glad or whatever you happen to do.
Well, why don't you just sit down and do that? Well, what, now, you know what you need to say.
You just said it when you walked in the room. In other words, we called the news conference this afternoon in hopes of settling this, and in the meantime, it has been settled.
Reverend, why are you holding a non-news conference, or why aren't you holding the news conference that you called?
Well, I tell you, we had called this news conference earlier to state the position of the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance and their feeling as it relates to certain happenings in our city. This is the Dallas spirit, and all of us who are in Dallas believe that all differences and grievances can be worked out in a peaceful way.
Were the parties in mind the SCLC and the Safeway and the boycott that's been going on?
I believe so. I believe that they would probably primary parties involved, and we are thankful and we are happy, we're elated that these parties seemingly have come to some agreement, and the city is on the march again.
Do you have any information as to what type of agreement has been reached?
No, not at this time.
Do you think perhaps a settlement was made at the particular time that it was? I think you said just before you came in here for the news conference. Do you think that could have been done to perhaps take the wind out of your sails?
I don't know, but whatever it was, I'm certainly privileged and happy that it happened. Dallas is a great city, and with all of the participation of all facets, though many times we may not understand one another, we may have personal quarrels, but Dallas greatness come because people like SCLC and other groups can come together, and we're thankful for that type of spirit.
Did you approve of the SCLC boycott of the Safeway stores?
I think that would be old hash at this point.
It was rumored that you had called a press conference to